Okay, welcome to today's tutorial. In this video, we're going to look at the branches of philosophy, right? So basically, we have four branches of philosophy. They are metaphysics, epistemology, axiology, and logics, right? Metaphysics, epistemology, axiology, and logics, right? So let's look at the first branch of philosophy that we have, which is metaphysics. So metaphysics is the oldest and it is the first branch of what? Of philosophy. The word metaphysics is derived from two Greek words, meta, which means after or beyond, then physical, which means things of nature. So the word was coined by Andronicus of Rhodes. This is the philosopher that coined the word metaphysics. So if we join these two words together, metaphysics simply means the study of reality beyond the physical nature or beyond the things we see. So what is metaphysics? Metaphysics is a branch of philosophy that deals with the study of reality beyond the physical nature, beyond the physical nature, or beyond the things we see, right? And there are two main approaches to metaphysics. We have idealism and what materialism. So let's look at the first approach to metaphysics, which is idealism. Idealism is a metaphysical approach which states that everything in the universe exists beyond the physical reality. Everything in the universe exists beyond the physical reality. In other words, there is a spirit or an idea behind everything in the universe, right? And this supports the theory of essentialism and dualism, right? Essentialism or dualism is a philosophical theory that explains man's existence as that which has some indispensable quality that are necessary for his existence, right? So that indispensable quality is the soul of man, is the spirit of man. So essentialism or dualism explains man's existence as that which has an indispensable quality, and that indispensable quality is the spirit or the soul of man that are necessary for his existence, right? So the theory of essentialism or dualism explains that essence precedes existence. That means you need the soul must come first before a man's existence, right? So idealism is a metaphysical approach which states that everything in the universe exists beyond the physical reality, right? It exists beyond the physical reality. In other words, there is a spirit or an idea behind everything in the universe, right? So a man's existence, for example, a man's existence, there is a spirit behind a man's existence, right? And that is why as idealism supports essentialism or dualism, which explains man's existence as that which has some indispensable qualities that are necessary for his existence, right? And those indispensable qualities or quality is referring to what? The spirit. So there are basically two types of idealism, right? We have objective idealism, which states that the physical universe is a projection of spiritual realities. For example, you see a human being, it's just a projection of the spirit. There is a spirit behind the existence of man, right? So objective idealism explains that everything is a reflection of what? Of the spirit. And philosophers that support this philosophy are Plato, Hegel, Fichte, Thomas Hillgreen, and Herbert Bradley. We can use the acronym PHF to remember the philosophers. P for Plato, H for Hegel, another H for Thomas Hillgreen, another H for Herbert Bradley. So it's H raised to the power of 3, PH raised to the power of 3, F, right? F is for what? Fichte. So these are the philosophers that support objective idealism. Then we have subjective idealism, and this is a type of idealism which says that physical objects are product of the mind, right? Before car was produced, it was once in the mind of man, right? It was once a man projected it in his mind and what made it. Even the aeroplane that we see, a man had it in mind before he created it, right? So physical objects are projection of what? Of the mind, or they are projection of ideas. They are projection of the mind, or they are projection of ideas. So examples of philosophers that support this philosophy are George Berkeley and Immanuel Kant, right? So again, idealism is a metaphysical approach which states that everything in the universe exists beyond the physical reality. In other words, there is a spirit or idea behind everything in the universe, right? So there is a spirit behind the existence of man. That's for objective idealism. And there is an idea behind the existence of physical objects that has to do with what? Subjective idealism. So having known all this, let's move to the next approach to metaphysics, which is materialism. And this states that nothing exists beyond what is physical. In other words, there is no spirit behind the existence of man. Examples of philosophers that support this philosophy are Thales, Democritus, Leucippus, and Epicurus, right? So materialism supports the theory of existentialism or monism, and this theory explains man's existence as a free being. In other words, existence precedes what? Essence. So it explains man's existence as a free being. In other words, there is no spirit behind the existence of man, right? So it explains that existence precedes what? Essence. So these are typical potential exam questions. So if essence precedes existence, that will be essentialism. If existence precedes essence, that will be what? Existentialism, right? So having known that, let's dash to the next branch of philosophy that we have, which is epistemology. And epistemology has to do with knowledge, right? Metaphysics has to do with reality, epistemology has to do with knowledge. So epistemology is the study of knowledge, its origin, nature, and limits. And there are basically three kinds of knowledge, or three types of knowledge rather. We have propositional knowledge, practical knowledge, and objective knowledge, right? Propositional knowledge is the knowledge that claims that something or someone is the case. It claims that someone or something is the case. It's a debatable knowledge. Propositional is a debatable knowledge. So, for example, University of Ibadan is the largest university in Nigeria. It is debatable, right? It is debatable. Somebody can come and say, no, it is not the largest, right? So any debatable knowledge is a propositional knowledge. Then we have the practical knowledge, and this is knowledge possessed by someone who has the ability to do something. For example, the knowledge of cooking by a cook, the knowledge of acting by an artisan, the knowledge of treating by a medical doctor, the knowledge of being able to teach by a teacher, right? So all these are practical knowledge. Then we have the objective knowledge, and this is knowledge of persons, place, or things. And this knowledge is usually acquired by acquaintance, right? For example, I know the governor of Lagos State. You know the governor of Lagos State because you've seen the governor or because you've heard of his name, right? Another example, I know where Lagos is. You know where Lagos is because you have been there, right? So any knowledge that is acquired by acquaintance is known as what? An objective knowledge. So conditions for knowledge. So conditions for knowledge. What are the conditions for knowledge? The conditions for knowledge are simply those factors that we must put in place before we can say that something, okay, yes, something is knowledge. The conditions or the factors for knowledge are truth, belief, and what? Justification, right? So before something can be considered a knowledge, it must be truth, it must be truthful, you must believe in it, and it must be justifiable, right? So here are the sources of knowledge. Where do we get knowledge from? So we can get knowledge through rationalism, that is through reasoning, through empiricism, that is from experience, through introspection, from thoughts and feelings. We can get knowledge through memory, recalling past events, from intuition, that is insights or sudden flash, from authorities like books, media, and through revelation, through supernatural sources. right? Like through dreams, through vision, or from holy books like the Bible or Quran, right? So these are the different sources of knowledge, and these are potential exam questions, right? You can be asked which of the following is not a source of knowledge, or which of the following is a source of knowledge. So take note of these 7 sources of what? Of knowledge. Then the next branch of philosophy that we have is axiology, and axiology has to do with what? Value, right? So axiology is a branch of philosophy that studies value, that deals with the study of value. And there are 2 branches of axiology. We have aesthetics and what? Ethics. So aesthetics is this philosophical study of beauty, art, or appearance, right? According to Will Durant, aesthetic is the study of ideal form or beauty. According to Michael Scriven, aesthetic is the study of works of art and natural beauty and the status of judgment about them. According to Michael Proudfoot, aesthetic is the differentiation between the works of art and the works of nature. So note these 3 philosophers and how they explained aesthetics. The most important for you to note here is the definition from Michael Proudfoot that said that aesthetic is the study of the differentiation between the works of art and the works of nature, right? Then the next branch of axiology that we have is ethics. And the word ethics is derived from the word ethos, which means custom. So ethics is the moral principle which guides a person's behavior. It's the moral principle which guides a person's behavior. It is concerned with the matter of good or bad, right or wrong, duty and obligation, virtue or vice, right? And we have 3 classes of ethics. We have normative ethics, meta-ethics, and descriptive ethics. So the normative ethics is a type of ethics that explains how people ought to behave. Meta-ethics talks about nature of ethics and morality, while the descriptive ethics describes people's view of morality, right? So you should know these 3 classification of ethics. Normative ethics describes how people ought to behave. Meta-ethics talks about the nature of ethics and morality, while descriptive ethics talks about people's view of what? Of morality. Then the last branch of philosophy that we have is logics, and logics has to do with what? Reasoning. So logic is a branch of philosophy that deals with the study of the proper and reasonable way of thinking, right? It is with clarity of thoughts and soundness of reasoning. So logic serves to dictate and avoid fallacies. Fallacies, they are errors in reasoning, right? We have 2 classes of logics. We have deduction and what? Induction. So deduction involves deductive reasoning and induction involves inductive what? Reasoning. And these 2 types of reasoning, we'll look at them later when we talk of what? Argument, right? So that's that for the branches of philosophy. So far so good. We have looked at the 4 branches of philosophy. The 4 branches of philosophy, they are metaphysics, epistemology, axiology, and logic, right? Metaphysics has to do with the study of reality, right? Epistemology has to do with the study of knowledge. Axiology has to do with the study of value, right? And logic has to do with the study of what? Reasoning. That has to do with reasoning. So these are the 4 major branches of philosophy. So in the next video, we're going to look at past questions as regards to the branches of philosophy.